Number one.
Good afternoon, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger. I'm George Brumley from Durham, North Carolina. It's been reasonably argued that the most critical factor in evaluating a business is establishing the sustainability of a competitive advantage. Let's assume that we have knowledge in hand about a few truly unique companies that possess sufficient strengths to out-duel their competition, and that we can therefore estimate future cash flows with relative certainty. I admit that getting this far is far from easy. Moreover, it seems that the wild card of an unchecked tort system has grave potential to turn even such sound analysis on its head. Predicted cash flows and reasonably estimated terminal values can be effectively driven to zero for business owners via a transfer to both litigants and litigators. My question is, how should intelligent investors attempt to factor such uncertainty into their valuations of potential investment opportunities?
Charlie's the lawyer, so I'll tell him I'll have him tell you how to protect yourself from his
I have
brethren.
one quick follow-up.
I think it is entirely fair as an investor to just quit claim certain areas of business as having too many problems. I almost feel that way about workman's compensation insurance in California. In other words, the system morphs into something that is so unfair and so crazy that I'm willing to pretty much at least leave it behind. And I think there are all kinds of areas like that. Another fellow and I once controlled a company that invented a better policeman's helmet. And we told them not to make it. We told them to sell it to somebody else who was judgment-proof, or we wanted the policeman to have the helmet, but we didn't want to make it. I think there are whole areas of activity where, for the already rich, the tort system makes participation foolish. And I think you can sort of figure out where those are and avoid them. I don't think the tort system is going to be fixed quickly.
Yeah, George, actually George Gillespie is, I think, here today, and he and I were directors of Pinkerton 20 years ago. And in fact, we owned a very significant percentage of Pinkerton's, although it was controlled by the family of the foundation. But one of the interesting problems then was the question of whether we would want to supply guards, for example, at airports. And if you think about it, Berkshire itself, we'll forget about Pinkerton, would be absolutely crazy to go into the business of supplying guards to airports. We might be more responsible in terms of selecting the guards, but if we were to have a guard, say at that Portland airport, from which a plane took off, or from what the original boarding was of the people that took off from Logan, or we were to have the guards at Logan or wherever, we might have been held liable for billions and billions of dollars. You know that people would have gone after us because we would have had deep pockets, and we would have had an employee of ours, and people would have said that if it hadn't been for your employee, these people wouldn't have all died and everything else wouldn't have happened. And for us to be in a business like Charlie in the helmet business, I mean, for us to be in a business like that would be madness when some other guy operating out of his basement can have guards. And if they blow up the whole airport, it doesn't make any difference because he's judgment proof. So it actually is a system that may discourage perhaps more responsible people from ever even dreaming of being in that kind of business. And unfortunately, I would say that the range of businesses since 1980, when we were thinking about that sort of thing at Pinkerton's, the range of businesses to whom such reasoning might apply has probably enlarged to a significant degree. There's just a lot of things that a rich corporation shouldn't do because they will pay a price if they are wrong, or even if somebody maybe suspects they were wrong, that would be incredibly disproportionate to what somebody in different economic circumstances would bear. It's absolutely a selection by the tort system of people that are going to provide certain services and products. And I don't know any answer for that except to avoid it. Now, you had another question, George?
Yes, just briefly, if you could give us an update on the economics of the Finova deal.
Well, the Finova deal is about like, well, it is like when we wrote the annual report. And actually, Finova's annual report deals with this, too. I think most of you know the terms of it. We guaranteed what was originally going to be a $6 billion loan that enabled creditors to be paid a large percentage of their claim in the Finova bankruptcy, and we only took down 5.6 billion of the 6 billion because there'd been payments made faster at Finova. Finova was a failed finance company, a very big one, and we're in partnership with Leucadia in this operation, and they have management responsibility and are doing a fine job. That loan of 5.6 billion, on which in effect we make roughly a 2% override on 90% of the loan. So if it had been 6 billion, we would have had a carry of 108 million a year, although it was going to come down. Now the loan is down to 3.2 billion, I believe. There was a bulk sale of some franchise receivables for about 500 million to GE Credit here not so long ago. So the exposure is down to 3.2 billion, but of course the 2% override is down to 2% on 3.2 billion. We feel, well, after September 11th, many of the assets of Finova were aircraft, and they were not the latest of aircraft, and they were not to the greatest of lessees in many cases. So there was a big hit to the aircraft portfolio, and there were other receivables relating to resort properties and that sort of thing, which were also hit by anything that impacted travel and that sort of thing. So the portfolio was worth less, appreciably less, on September 12th than it was on September 10th. And that will not, in my view, our 3.2 billion, as far as I'm concerned, we've guaranteed it, but I think that is very close to 100% okay. And then there's a group of bonds underneath it, which are the residual bonds, you might say, of the ones that existed in the bankruptcy, because 70% got paid off and 30% didn't. And we own, that means of that residual, we own 13% or so. Those bonds are going to be worth a lot less than we thought they were going to be worth summer of last year. We bought our position at 67 cents on the dollar, and we got 70 cents on the dollar plus these bonds, plus we get the override on the Berkshire loan. So we got all our money back and then some on the bonds that we bought, and we get the override on the Berkshire. So we will, in all likelihood, almost certainly, I would say, although who knows? I mean, I didn't know about September 11th, but we're very, very likely to make a significant amount of money on the whole transaction, but not as much money as we thought we were going to make last summer. We feel very pleased with the way Leucadia is handling things, but there is not as much value in that portfolio today because of the events of September 11th. Charlie?
Yeah, it's an interesting example of Ben Graham's margin of safety principle. A whole lot has gone wrong that we didn't predict, and yet we're coming out fine.
Yeah, we should make some hundreds of millions in aggregate over time on it, but a lot went wrong. But we, as Charlie said, we had a margin of safety when we bought into, and we felt we had a margin of safety, and it turns out we needed it.